Good day. I'm Doug Carlberg. I'm president and CEO of Carlberg Consulting Group and past chairman of the San Antonio Manufacturing Association. Welcome to our Lead With Me series on leadership. Today, I'm lucky to have a close friend of mine who I've known probably 35 plus years, Joe Barto III, and he's got an interesting story to tell you, starting off with his military career all the way through and forming the company he's at today, which is basically Training Modernization Group, which they call TMG. They're located in Virginia, and they were founded in 2002. And they're amazing. I've gone through a number of their programs. Joe has been a keynote speaker with the Association of Manufacturing Excellence, not only running workshops at their international conferences, but also being a keynote speaker at their what we call the Champions Club. It's for lean leaders and at the executive level. He also helped set up one of the workshops for the Champions Club, I think twice, 2 or 3 times at West Point, where we really kind of got behind the scenes and how West Point really develops their leadership. Welcome here today, Joe.
Thanks, Doug. It's always good to be with you.
It's always great to see.
You do have a lot of history.
Yeah, we do have a lot of history, and actually we've helped each other out through our careers over the 30, 35, 40 years that we've known each other. So I want to ask you a little bit of a question. I know you really kind of had a very interesting history in the military, and being retired military myself, I really appreciate everything you've done, and thank you for your service. But you went through the West Point, and I think you were on their basketball team, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. So one of my claims to fame, Doug, is I was an Army basketball player, and in fact got recruited when I was in high school by a college coach that some of you may know, Coach Mike Krzyzewski.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say I had 3 claims to fame as an Army basketball player. First was I knew every offense on the East Coast but ours. Had a front row seat to every game, free snacks at halftime. Coach K was really, really a demanding leader. So, playing basketball at West Point, him being a West Point graduate, I understood that, West Point is a very demanding place. I mean, it's the best leadership school in the world. But him having gone there, he understood what that was about. And he truly used basketball as a way to develop us as leaders. So I like to tell people I have a much better relationship with Coach K today than I had in 1974 when I played for him.
Because he was a really tough taskmaster, and that's why he created all these winning teams. Unbelievable.
He really was. And I was with him a couple months ago in his office as I'm getting ready to transition my company now. And he's been a huge mentor and coach. When you think about, my life in the military and, running this company for the last 23 years, it's really about, this idea of what high-performing teams look like. And, certainly, he believed that high-performance teams win and win all the time. But you still have to take care of your people. And he's an amazing mentor for me and my family. We still laugh a lot about our time together at West Point. He was a brand new coach, only 26 years old when he coached us the first time. And I graduated from West Point in 1978, became an armor officer. My first assignment was at Fort Knox, Kentucky, where I was blessed to be working with the finest non-commissioned officers in the Army called drill sergeants. So I was assigned to 1st AIT OSA Brigade, which was about taking young Americans and 13 weeks later turning them into armored crewmen. And I got to really understand what the standards of training were about and what high performance looked like from really professionals who took me under their wing and then taught me a lot there. And then went to Germany, commanded a cavalry troop in Germany during from 82 to 84 on the North German Plain, defending the Fulda Gap in the Cold War. Came back and taught ROTC at James Madison University for 4 years. Then went to the Command General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth and arrived at Fort Stewart just in time for an all-expense paid tour to Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
You commanded an armored battalion, a cavalry unit over there, if I remember correctly.
Well, I didn't command. I was the executive officer of Task Force 24 Cav, which led the 24th Division into the Euphrates River Valley on the big left hook. And I will tell you that when I look back on that part of my life, you know, that was 1990. I'd been in the military about 12 years at that point. The things that Coach K taught me as a young 18, 19-year-old came back in spades when I got to lead soldiers in combat. Because sometimes you only get one time to get it right. And, you know, when I stood in front of that unit the day before we crossed the berm, you know, I told them that we had trained our entire adult lives for this minute. And it was our responsibility to accomplish our mission, but do it with dignity and do it with honor, so that when we came home, we had a good story to tell and we were proud about what we did. And that was a period where, and when I wrote my book on that leading that unit, we did a 25th anniversary edition, and Coach K actually wrote the foreword to that.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, it was really fun because when I asked him to do it, you know, he said absolutely. And I didn't remember that when I was bringing my soldiers back from Operation Desert Storm, he was winning his first national championship. And he, in the forward, he talks about national championships are really cool, but the stuff that this unit did during Desert Storm, that's for real. You know, that's affecting somebody's life every day. So, yeah. So then I got to spend 2 years working for the senior government in the Army, General Fred Franks, who was also a huge mentor of mine. You know, he's one of 10 4-stars in the Army, and he allowed me to be a part of his inner circle as a special assistant. And then retired in 97, and in 2002 started this business we call TMG.
Well, tell us a little bit more about TMG. I mean, because that's really where I started to know you initially. We both connected heads, even though we were both in the military, but we were going in different circles at the time. So tell us about TMG, why you formed it, and what's going on with it today. I know it's grown into a kind of a family business, so you can tell us a little bit about how that all happened, too.
So, you know, when I retired from the military, I spent 3 years as a defense contractor. And the guy who hired me in 1997 when I graduated, when I retired from the Army, really good guy. A guy's named Joe Alexander. 3 years after he hired me, he walked in my office and fired me. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, you transition from the military, you and I have done this. You transition into the private sector. I mean, there's a whole nother set of rules. And, you know, he trusted me to do the work. And I remember I asked him right after he hired me, I said, so what do I do now? And he said, well, we got to go find some work. I said, well, I'm not even sure what that means. He said, well, go up to Fort Eustis. There's a small business person up there that'll help you. So I'm sitting in the lobby there, and you remember they had the big bookshelf with all the handouts.
Yep. I spent a fair amount of time stationed there.
Yeah, and I looked at one of the handouts was doing business with the government. So I pull that thing out, and I'm kind of interested in that. But they're talking about contracts and RFPs and all this. I knew nothing about that stuff. And so it was good. So I went when he fired me, and for all the right reasons. But I did take what I learned in that 3 things because it was a graduate degree in running a business. I remember he used to laugh. Every month they'd send me this income statement. I had no damn idea what that was. Some days it was good, some months it was bad. I didn't understand what the numbers were. And I'd call him up and I'd say, I don't know what I should do with this. He said, don't worry about it, just keep doing what you're doing. Well, obviously, that came back to haunt me. But took that experience, went to a startup company for 2 years, and 911 happened in the middle of that. And I was actually at the World Trade Center at 911. I was on a business trip for my company. I got on the airplane at about 6 o'clock in Norfolk and flew to LaGuardia, and long story, at 9:46, I was at the intersection of Bessie and West Avenue when the first airplane flew right over my head.
You were right downtown.
Right downtown. I heard this big explosion. I looked left and right, and then up through the sunroof, there was a huge fireball. And the guy I was with said, what do you think? And I said, man, I'm not sure what's going on here, but it ain't going to get any better. So we need to find a way away from this. And so we did. But on the way home from that, having some real thoughts about what my life was about. At that time, I had 4 sons, and they were all in high school, elementary school, and I wasn't really happy at work. And you're in the, you say, what do you do now? But on the way home, I decided that I was tired of working in an organization that made decisions about me that I had no input on. And with that as kind of the beginning, I said, I think at this point in my life, I'll take a bet on myself. And, so that was really the foundation of starting TMG. Me and 2 of my friends, and I always say I would have never been able to do it by myself, but that's a very military thing. You get your friends, you have a common mission. We sat down in a bagel joint shortly after that, and we said, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to be all in. And I think a lot of companies or a lot of people start a business with, well, let's see how this works out. If it doesn't work out, we can always go find a job. And we decided that if we were going to do this, we were going to be all in on this. So
what's interesting, I did the same thing when I formed M2 Global. After I left Harris, I formed a board, advisory board, with a whole bunch of friends that I've known over the years. A lot of them through not only the military, but also through the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. So it's a small world. I mean, you got to have a sounding board. You got to have somebody to tell you, are you heading in true north? If you don't have that thing, you're probably not going to be successful.
And your friends. I mean, it's always about your reputation. And, so shortly after that, we were able to, our first contract was this Newport News shipbuilding, which is a huge thing. So at that time with Newport News shipbuilding, all the shipbuilders were Naval Academy guys, but all the business guys were West Point guys. The head of the company was a guy named Dana Mead, who was a West Point graduate, head of the econ department at West Point. And a good friend of mine, a classmate of mine named Dan Orzinski, was the VP of strategy. So we met one day for lunch as we normally did, and like when you and I get together in San Antonio whenever we're around, and what are you up to? What are we doing? And he said, we really need somebody to help us better train our new welders, because we now are, we're through the 90s. Now we're starting to build ships again, and we've got a terrible attrition rate on our new hires and all the rest of these issues that face manufacturing companies every day. So that launched us. And then shortly after that, Newport News Shipbuilding, as you well know, was huge a part of AME back in those days. And that's how I got turned on.
And they have today, and I've been through it more than once, they've got probably the world-class, probably the best in North America apprentice program that I've ever seen. And I've gone through, over the years, gone through a lot of factories, a lot of organizations, but that is just totally amazing what they generate out of that apprentice program at Newport News Shipbuilding.
Yeah, I mean, and they're, it's a big company, and we did some amazing work down there. Just the three of us, when we started the business. So we were in the mode at that time, we're never going to have anybody else, just going to be the three of us. We're just going to do our work, and we felt like, and if Newport News Shipbuilding, we'd work there for the rest of our lives. And so that was started in 2002. 2004, they had a change of leadership at Newport News Shipbuilding. And make another long story short, one day he called me up and said, I need to talk to you. And they fired us. They lost half our business in one day. And then we had this gut check. Are we gonna give up? Are we gonna figure it out? And we went back to that meeting at the bagel joint. This is going to be what business is about, especially small business. Small businesses don't get too high on the high or too low on the low. You just got to keep your eye on the ball and keep driving through. So we had a pretty simple business model. We just take what we made every month, and at the end of the month, we split it three ways. And at the end of the year, whatever was left over, we went on a trip. It wasn't that hard.
But it's amazing. My business, M2 Global, we got hit the same way. After 9/11, our sales dropped in half. I had to lay off half the people. I went out and bought a book, Who Moved My Cheese, which you've read, and I gave a copy to every one of my employees. I told them to read it. And then we came back and we had sessions to talk about it, how it related to our business because our cheese got moved.
I'll tell you, that was the conversation I had with Coach K a couple months ago. He told me, he said, Joe, the kiss of death for any business is ignoring the realities that you have to face. So... he could, when they had one and done, he said, well, I could have gotten all pissed off about that, when we went to NIL, I couldn't have gotten all pissed off about that. But the environment, the realities, you cannot ignore the facts. That's a good to great feature. So if that's the facts, that's your assumption that you could have one client for the rest of your life, that dog's not going to hunt. So you got to go figure it out. So we ended up at Fort Rucker, Alabama, with another guy that I knew at West Point, and he was running the largest maintenance contract in the Army at the time, the aviation maintenance contract at Fort Rucker, something you're very familiar with.
Well, yeah, being an Asia guy myself,
Yeah. And, he needed strategic planning. He needed some support for his training down there. They had 3,000 people in that contract. And, so we were able to work through that dip. And then we realized that AME became a venue for us to share with like-minded people. And it was the time at AME, and you know this, Doug, that When you went to AME in the 90s, it was all about the tools. Track on 5S, a track on Visual Workplace, a track on, whatever the case. When I first joined AME and Champions with Pat Cargiuelo, and you and a lot of others, was when we realized that lean was just a tool to be a better leader. The tools don't work unless a leader is leading them. And that's why Pat asked, shortly after I joined, he said, do you think you could get us to West Point to figure out how the United States Army since 1802 has been training leaders, which is a characteristic of a high-performance organization, which goes to what TMG does. We are a program management firm that plugs into companies that have big company problems without the big company infrastructure. We help them build a stabilized team, then teach them the continuous improvement tool set so they can be a much higher performing business. And their business results, in terms of cost, schedule, quality, backlog, customer satisfaction, profitability are going up. And that whole model goes all the way back to work for playing basketball for Coach K.
It's interesting at M2, exactly that. I went through a couple of these sessions that I've heard you talk. I heard you run your workshop. As a matter of fact, I've helped set up a number of these workshops with AME, especially in the Southwest region. I can remember at M2 Global, I had you come in and do an assessment of all my employees and how engaged they were in the business, and it was a great tool. It gave me a cookbook going forward, and I thought we were pretty far advanced because of all this other stuff that I had done through AME and doing site assessments through the organizations to help them get their award. But that assessment tool was just totally amazing, and I've recommended it to a number of other people. If you ever need an assessment of engagement of your people, really contact Joe at TMG. It's a great tool. I can remember also on one of your workshops, you gave everybody, "Are you a leader? My team plays to win." And it was a little pin you gave everybody.
Exactly.
And,
there it is right there.
There it is right there.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a public affirmation. One of the things we work on at TMG, and you're obviously have been taking advantage of this, is in every organization there's a leader that is the last leader between the organization and the people who actually do the work. They're called team leaders or supervisors. We call them heartbeat leaders. And those heartbeat leaders, when they have a good day, everybody has a good day. And when they don't have a good day, well, we all know what that looks and feels like. Unfortunately, in most organizations, those leaders are the least developed. We select them because they were great at doing what as an individual contributor. They make that transition into their first leadership position. And often, without some structure, like at West Point, like at Toyota, if you don't help that person make that transition, you'll take a very great worker and ruin them. And so it's really the focus of TMG, is when you get that right, they can work through anything. If you don't get that right, then everything's a top-down directed, just shut up and color, do what you're supposed to do. And that's the opposite of what a lean organization's about.
Yeah, if you push everything down, the tendency is people will check their brain at the door when they walk in. You really need that participation, and that's the secret sauce of the Toyota production system.
Absolutely. But see, people don't get that. What they don't get is that Toyota and all the best practice model companies take a tremendous time to select the right people. Then once they select them, they train them to do the work. Then they match them with a leader that knows what they're doing, that's been trained in the Toyota model. And we just in the private sector, a lot of times, we don't want to go through that because that's overhead, right? That's an investment. We don't have time. It's always crazy, Doug. When you have the money, you're so busy you don't have the time. When you got the time,
you don't have the money. Yeah.
So there's always a reason. There's not one executive that I've met in 25 years of doing this work that will not tell me that they need to do a better job identifying, training, and developing their leadership.
That's so true. I'm going to switch a little bit. I know you've done a lot of work on how important hiring veterans were. I came across an old magazine of Target where actually I'm on the cover, but in the big article in there, veterans are a valuable resource in your organization, and you were recognized by the Veterans Administration in the state of Virginia for your work on really promoting and hiring veterans. You want to just give us a little bit of your thoughts about that?
Well, it's not just veterans, Doug. It's any high-performance organization understands that their ability to bring the right people into their organizations is a key success factor. You just go back to, again, the Collins work on good to great. Every organization does three great things. They get the right people on the bus. It's a fit. They get them in the right seats based upon their individual skills and abilities. And they get the wrong people off the bus. No better example of that is Mike Krzyzewski at Duke University. He'll tell you today that the number one thing that I cannot delegate as the leader of my organization is picking the people on my team. Yet, in the private sector, in manufacturing, we delegate that down to the HR people. I don't want to be involved in that, right? I don't want to. But you and I, running small businesses, we knew that that was the most important decisions we made, along with what the work was going to be. So when you look at all organizations, and this is the work we're doing with the Navy today, it's built on the same model that Coach K had, what we've been teaching for 23 years about veterans is, why don't companies hire veterans? Because we believe that it's the veteran's job to find a job. When really, nobody in America finds a job until an employer offers the job. So we have a push system. We invest millions of dollars in teaching them how to write a resume, all the rest of that. Then we turn them loose and we hope they find a job. Then on the other hand, you have all these employers that are posting a rec that says, I need a welder with 10 years of experience, and hoping somebody applies. So the challenge we have with veterans, and that's endemic across American manufacturing today, is when post and hope meets train and pray, you get what we have. All these people looking for work, all these people looking for good people, and knowing that their systems don't talk to each other. So in the lean example, where do you start? You got to start on the demand side of the equation. So you got to start with educating the employers on how to improve the performance of their talent acquisition and retention system. And this is where it gets hard. Because employers don't want to get involved in this because it's messy. They want to stay involved in the process because the process doesn't talk back to them. So here's an example. In a high-performance organization, how do you enter the marketplace when you're looking for talent? The example I'll give you is, you think Coach K goes to the admissions department at Duke and gives them a rec. I need a 7-foot center that can score 30 points and play with both hands. Send me 5 resumes that I can interview. Do you think that he shows up at freshman orientation and says, hey, anybody play basketball? Show up at the game. There's a methodical process. And when you talk to Coach K, if you talk to him today, he said, Joe, I can get any kid in the country, but I only get 3. So I better get the right kid. And rarely is it because they're a good basketball player. So when you sit with a company and you ask the senior executive, why would somebody come work here? What do you think I get when I ask that question?
They probably don't have they'll probably tell you we have great benefits or something like that.
It's just amazing. I did this the other day, and I said, okay, why would somebody come work here? And Doug, after an hour, and this was at the whole lead team for the company, I finally just looked at him and said, you know, guys, it really sucks to be you. I mean, you can't find good people. They don't want to come to work. They don't, all the rest of the stuff. I mean, I said, if I stay here any longer, I'm going to slip my wrist. So I got up. I said, but I get it. You guys are so special. I get all that. The president of the company followed me out to my car. He said, Joe, I'm really, really sorry about that. And I said, hey, man, don't worry. This is often how it works out, right? You just don't want to own the problem. And he said, but you know what I learned today, Joe? I said, what? He said, I wouldn't come work at this company. We hire these guys because we really need them. We throw them out there with a shitty leader. They don't know what they're doing. They get pissed off. They leave. Or they stay and not do anything. And he said, you know what he told me today? If I can't answer that question, but you go to these high-performance organizations, and they will tell you why you come work here. Because if you come here and you want to learn and you want to be a part of the team, you'll never go anywhere else in your life.
And I can tell you, there's a company in Salt Lake called O.C. Tanner that has found that formula. And if you ever get a chance, and AME typically does a tour with them every year, if you get a chance to see them, because they really know how to engage people, and they're just amazing.
It's why we've had to do a Team G, and we're up to 75 people here. Last year we did a little over $10 million worth of business. This year we're going to go to 15. We're experiencing what we call the COVID bounce. Coming out of COVID, the number one thing it taught the high performance leaders was, if we don't get our people processes right, it doesn't make any difference to anything else we do. So COVID, they decimated leadership because they had to keep the direct labor guys. They laid off half their workforce and 2 months later tried to hire them back. And now we're finding that those guys figured out that if we don't start making this place a place where people are going to want to come to work and want to be a part of our team, where they can see a career path, where we're going to train them and develop them, we're going to share our successes with our people in terms of bonus programs, compensation, all the rest of those things, so that the best recruiter for any company is the people that work there.
You got that right.
And if you don't, and if your own people won't recruit for you, then you got a whole bunch of other issues that you need to get resolved before you get started on this journey.
Yeah, and actually, some of my best employees or hires were referral from employees that worked for me. And that if that happens, you've got the sauce that really works within your company.
Oh my God, Doug, and this, why we started, it was a huge deal in 2008 when we hired our first family member. Because we drank that Kool-Aid, right? Mm-hmm. Can't have family in the company because, all the rest of that stuff. So I bought into that, and so then you had this situation where, why would I bring somebody I don't even know into my company and exclude somebody that I trust with my life? But it was a huge thing, because I realized that if I was going to bring my own children into my company, I had to be a better leader. Because I knew they wanted to be there. So the problem must be me. And, today my 4 sons are in the business. Even the people that we hire here today, and you often say that people are family members, but one thing I'm really proud of is that we at TMG had to use every one of the tools we teach to our partners. Because if I can't be a high-performance organization as the founder of TMG, I can never look at you as the head of M3 Technologies and say, here's what I think you should do. And that's just one of the values, is we don't drink our own Kool-Aid.
You got to lead by example.
That's exactly what it's about. That's exactly what it's about.
Why is it now the time to, because you talked about transitioning your business to your family. Tell me, why do you think it's the time now?
Well, a couple things. One is I turned 70 this year. And, my wife and I, about a year ago, sat down and, we've been very, very fortunate in this company. We've won. All our kids are in a good career. We're in a financial situation that you went through at M3 with
M2.
I'm just not worth the, it's not worth the money. I mean, I'm not saying it to be arrogant, but now it's our time. Because also, as we know with M2 and with TMG, it's what I often get from the next generation is, Dad, you work every day. Yes, I do. When you're running your own business, you don't get to have a day off. You don't get to work 8 to 5. It's your life. And that's why we made that decision at that dang bagel place in 2001. That when you're going to run a small business, it becomes what you are. And now, every day when you're trying to feed the tribe, you don't get to say, well, it just didn't work out, so the guy's got to go find another job. We decided we weren't going to do that. But that's a level of commitment that you got to have to the organization, any high-performance organization.
I'm going to kind of wrap up here with a question for you. As you look forward, what do you think the greatest challenge is for the next generation of leaders, and what advice can you give them?
Don't do that right now, today, with mine. One is, failure is not a destination. When you're running your own business like any high-performance organization, it's not going to be a linear line. There's going to be good days and bad, and you can't get too high on the high or too low on the low. You just got to know that we're going to work through this. And I saw something the other day that was very meaningful to me was, you can't beat a leader who won't quit. You just got to say, we're going to work through this. That when we have the bad times, there's going to be another door that opens. You just got to look for that other door. The other is, don't try to do it alone. And what that means is that you've got to share with your whole team what your business status is. We're a very transparent company. Because if I truly believe in my team, I've got to trust them that if they understand the business more, that they can help me. Very Toyota idea. When everybody understands what's going on, I can engage 75 people, not just one. And it goes to this, the age-old thing, you've heard this 100 times. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you got to bring the team with you. So again, it goes back to picking the team. And then it goes back to my dad and certainly Coach K and all of my mentors was, when you're a leader, you don't get to have a bad day. You got to bring it every day.
Joe, thank you for spending time with me today. This has been a great discussion, a lot of great takeaways here, and I'm looking forward to when this thing gets released. I'm sure it's going to have a lot of hits. Here again, I'm Doug Carlberg from Carlberg Consulting and also past chair of the San Antonio Manufacturing Association. I'm running a series of podcasts on leadership called Lead With Me. If you want to look at past podcast, it's available at the SAMA website, which is sama-tx.org, or Carlberg, carlcg.com. Thank you for tuning in today.